and welcome to another edition of Tech Market Views, View from the Top. I am absolutely delighted to be joined in the studio today by Rob Walker, UK Managing Director of Capgemini.
Good morning.
Welcome, Rob. Where I wanted to kick off was on your career. You're sitting in front of me now and you've done 18 months at Capgemini.
That's right.
Yes. Before that, you did a stint at Cognizant, firstly as lead of the UK and I business, and then as President Global Growth Markets. But it was EY where you spent a big chunk of your career, 24 years.
Just over 24
years. So what really interests me, because they are very different organisations going from an EY to a Cognizant. So what did you find during that transition? Was it a difficult shift in terms of the culture going from a management consultancy to a global SI?
Well, I have to remind myself I did 24 years at EY because when I joined EY, it was the intention of doing 3 years on a graduate program, and somehow I ended up there 24 years later. Although my first ever client was PeopleSoft as well. So I sort of fell into working in the tech industry, which is where the passion came for working with technology. There are clearly differences between a Big Four partnership, which is quite unique structure and therefore has a certain set of characteristics that drive it, versus a listed, US listed company like Cognizant, which clearly the majority of the people are based in India. And there are differences. But I think what really surprised me when I went from one to the other is there are also a huge number of similarities.
Okay.
And those similarities, I think, are true in all successful professional services organizations in terms of focus on a client, the importance of relationships, the entrepreneurial energy that needs to go with making successful clients, that you have to not just have a relationship, but use that relationship to understand the business and drive successful outcomes. And Cognizant clearly was different because it started from technology rather than typically where a Big Four firm starts from. A lot of Big Four sits around transactional or regulatory advice. The relationships start differently. So again, if you're overly simplifying it, a Big Four would start with a functional relationship, often a CFO, and work outwards. Whereas in a system integrator, you start with a CIO and work outwards. And I think the big difference that I think I was surprised at is the share of wallet often can be very different in terms of, in a consulting organization, there's not that much consulting dollars to go around. Whereas in a system integration, there's a huge amount of spend. It's equally as competitive, in terms of regardless of where you work from it. And there's also a different expectation and value that you create, in terms of, and therefore the price point that you can charge, which actually makes a very different economic model. But there are also real similarities in terms of client centricity, understanding your client, the importance of understanding how you engage with those clients.
And did you feel that you had to change at all when you moved from one to the other in terms of your leadership style or leadership approach?
It was interesting because I was in the consulting business for a long time at EY, and we went through a period of really great growth because we started consulting from scratch, during my tenure there. And therefore, you bring a lot of people from outside an organization as well as promote from within. And something I found quite odd when you bring a lot of people from the outside is different people's expectations about why you are successful. So without naming some names, we had some people from a certain organization who liked to come in and straight away tell us what we were doing wrong. And then we had others who would come in and try and understand the uniqueness of what we were trying to do and work with us and understand and build off that. And I think that's a part of my leadership ethos in terms of, when I arrived at Cognizant, the same way when I arrived at Capgemini, you're stepping into organizations that already have been very successful in their own right. You don't get to be a global business of those reputations without already have gotten more things right than wrong. So the first thing I think I try to understand is what makes this business successful, what makes it unique in front of its clients. And then you have to build trust with those teams. So you have to show some empathy, understand how things work, and then begin to use that trust to implement some of the changes that you think the business needs. Because it's only a very short period of time that you get to lead a business in a very long period of time, and the importance of building on the legacy you've inherited and all of the people who have led those businesses before. It's a huge responsibility and a unique opportunity to say, can I leave this position at whatever point in the future, hopefully a long time from now, and in terms of I can hand it over to someone in a much better shape, fit for continue the growth that both organizations have had.
And 18 months in, I think in summary, it's so far so good. The numbers have looked pretty healthy. So get the numbers right. Half one growth in the UKI of 6%, and then nudging up to 9% in Q3. So a bit of improvement as we've gone through the year.
I think we're delighted with where we find ourselves. This is a pretty flat market.
The numbers are market beating. Yeah.
The business was performing well before, so it was,
So you've not done anything. What are you doing?
I'd love to say it's all me. The reality is I stepped into a very well-run business.
Okay.
And there was already some momentum coming forward that we've built off. I think the things that please me most is the breadth of the growth across all our sectors is pretty broad-based.
Okay.
So yes, there are certain aspects where we're driving growth. Financial services, TMT in particular, are performing well. But actually, all of our sectors are performing well. And it's both a combination of existing relationships and new relationships. And a lot of those new relationships, unsurprisingly, are being built on a number of disruptive opportunities that are in the market. I don't think I've ever seen a market as dynamic as it is at the moment, both in the sense of global politics, global social upheaval, and just the pace of technology change. I know through most of our careers, we've been saying the cycle of technology innovation is getting faster and faster. I don't see that slowing down at all. And that creates unique opportunities for our clients. And I think many of them are trying to establish, do we want to lead? Do we want to be a fast follower? Where do we drive the growth opportunities that come? Is this an efficiency play? Is it a growth opportunity? And a lot of clients are quite confused around technology opportunities and where to get started.
I mean, you talked about financial services and TMT being strong performers. I track your public sector business very closely as well. That's also been doing very well. But is there because obviously you talk about clients are struggling to almost know where to invest their money because of the pace of change. Are you seeing differences in different verticals in terms of the services that are most in demand from you, or is it similar story across the different verticals?
I think there are clearly some traditional industries that typically embrace technology earlier in the cycle. I think some aspects of financial services, some aspects of global consumer product companies where they have to operate in a very competitive global organization. We're seeing them emerge to do things at scale across processes, probably earlier in the cycle than some companies. But I would think there are some consistent trends for all of our clients, regardless of where they are, which is the cost of living is going up, the cost of employing people is increasing. You're being asked to do more with less budget. How do you drive greater efficiencies? How do you drive a greater degree of automation? How do you, dare I use the word, leverage Gen AI?
I'm sure we'll get into that a bit more in a minute.
And agentic and other opportunities. So I think those themes are consistent across all of our client base.
Okay. And obviously you as a company are having to keep up with the pace of change, and you've made quite a few investments globally and in the UK in partnerships and in acquisitions, the big one being WNS, obviously. Can you just talk me through the logic behind some of those big moves that you've made over the past, since you've been there, last 18 months?
I think the bet we're making with WNS, and I personally think it's the right bet, is for clients who are going to scale changes with these technologies, they have to start with the business outcome as a first point. And that means you need domain capability, you need industry capability. So WNS brings us phenomenal expertise around domain and process. And I think it's a combination of, if you can combine technology with data and domain content and engineering, you can then look holistically end-to-end around that process. and help clients take advantage both of the efficiencies of agentic, but also the value unlock. And the value unlock being in terms of whether it's supply chain or customer service or customer experience. There's a lot of opportunities to grow your business. But I think you're going back to that classic sort of cycle of this is business process transformation. And that's what WNS and S4C and others will provide around that compelling opportunity to link these different combinations. And I think what we're looking to help clients with is being the trusted partner who can help orchestrate and accelerate business outcomes.
Yeah, and it sounds like making sure you invest strongly in all three, the tech, the engineering, and the consultancy, to make sure that you can live up to your clients' expectations.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Okay. Another really hot topic at the moment is sovereignty. I think, well, I know I've seen a lot of your IT services peers setting out their stalls in what they mean by sovereignty and how they're going to meet their clients' expectations in terms of sovereignty. But it's also a term that's bandied around a hell of a lot, and I hear numerous definitions. I think it means different things to different people. So I wonder, what does it mean to you, digital and data sovereignty?
Look, it's a great question, and I think you need to unpick actually what do you mean by it, because you can look at it from a legal perspective, you can look at it from a data perspective, you can look about it from a storage perspective, you can look about it from a physical product. The reality is, I think in today's environment, many clients are going to be unable to disconnect themselves from the physical product. But I think what they're looking to with sovereignty is to solve some of those earlier problems around actually who has legal control over my contracts, my data, my information. Physically, where is my data sitting? If I'm using a large language model, do I get assurance that actually my IP won't be infringed? And I think when you start going down these various layers, sovereignty really is giving a client a different combination of choices about where, the security they've got on legally, where their data sits. And whether their IP will be protected. So you're beginning to see whether it's an air-gap solution or fully sovereign solutions, which give you the advantage of some of the cloud agility, but actually are genuinely air-gapped being offered. And I think clients are very interested in that, particularly if you're obviously in defense, or if you're in health, or if you're in those territories where you need to protect your data. But I think as the extension for that, you don't have to be fully sovereign. You can choose to make aspects of your organization have a sovereignty solution that sits on that. Clearly, there is a cost that comes with sovereignty. Yes, having a bespoke sovereign solution, in the short term, will be more expensive than just having a non-sovereign solution. So I think the role of someone like a Capgemini is to help clients navigate actually what are they looking for, how deep down that technology stack do they want to go, and then how pervasive do they need that across their organization.
Okay. And what are you seeing as the response from your industry in terms of your peers, your suppliers? Are you seeing similar responses across the competitive landscape in terms of the sovereignty aspect?
Yeah, and clearly we work with a number of those ecosystem providers, the hyperscalers and SAP. We recently announced a sovereign solution with SAP. So that's an important. The value of what we bring is part of enabling that ecosystem for our clients. So we will work with our alliance partners to do that. I personally think we're quite unique in terms of being a global European-based system, system integrator. There are very few European headquartered system integrators of our scale. I think that gives us a lot of confidence and gives clients confidence that actually when we talk about sovereignty, it goes to the heart of what we stand for as a global business headquartered in Europe.
Okay. And you mentioned the SAP partnership for Sovereign Cloud. You also made the Cloud4C acquisition. Can you just talk me through some of those decisions to make those investments and how you will then leverage those acquisitions and partnerships for the benefit of your clients in this sort of sovereignty space?
Yeah, well, so sovereignty is combined with some of these agentic and cloud trends that we're seeing. And I think someone like a Cloud4C, what that allows us to do is to manage and fully automate multi-cloud environments, be those sovereign or non-sovereign solutions. And you look at those trends we were talking about earlier around AI, automation, machine learning, agentic, whatever combination they come through. The reality is that clients are expecting us to be able to automate and no longer have FTEs driving outcomes for clients. And S4C in particular bring one of the most compelling automation environments that allow us to offer a really competitive offer to our clients that is at a price point that, if you break the cycle between assets and headcount, it allows us to offer a very compelling platform to our clients.
Okay. We've already talked about the need to accelerate technological adoption, AI adoption in particular, and it's a struggle that many organizations are going through in terms of shifting from those pilots, proof of concepts, experimentations, to production and then production at scale. Now, the SAP partnership was designed to sort of support that journey for your clients, wasn't it, in terms of accelerating that adoption of agentic AI, enterprise transformation, and pushing your clients forwards. Overall, though, how do you see the industry stepping up in terms of being able to support their clients in accelerating that pace of change? Because we see a lot of failures of the pilots and proof of concepts, not that many getting through to successful, certainly at scale production. So what's your take on that?
Well, I personally think we're in the foothills of what is the art of the possible. I was with a client last week, and he referenced a quote he heard from Bill Gates, which is AI is overhyped in the short term, underhyped in the long term. And I think that's a really good summary of where we are. But I think that longer term opportunity is a huge advantage. But you need to apply it correctly. And I think that's the bet we're making on intelligent operations in terms of the application of that data technology and workflow to drive an end-to-end business outcome. And I think we'll begin to pivot far more in that direction to get scale benefits. I think there are certainly more savings as it relates to classic run services. So if you take a sort of ADM or AMS situation, in many ways, I think being an incumbent is a risk at the moment. I think you're very exposed because if you come to the end of a 3-year cycle and you haven't implemented your own disruptive changes, you haven't embedded the tooling that you're doing, just running something cheaply and safely is no longer enough. You have to be able to drive significant productivity savings. And so I think we are in a really interesting pivot. But the scale benefits, I think, will come from the transformation and re-engineering of those mega processes that sits in our clients.
Okay. And you have a new brand promise and marketing slogan, Make It Real.
Make it real,
which suggests to me that you're trying to convey to your clients that you are best placed to help them on that journey, to help them really leverage the benefits from the technologies that are available to them today, of which there are many and growing number. What makes you think that you're better placed than your competitors to make it real for your clients?
Well, I quite like Make It Real because it's quite playful. Sort of a play on it and IT. You can have some fun with it. And I think actually one of our values is fun. And we do very, very serious things, but we also do need to make sure we have some fun at work. So I quite like the positive attributes that go of making it real. And clearly there's part of that is our promise is to drive an outcome, a genuine pragmatic outcome. And make it real, as well as the playful aspects. Look, I think there are many companies who can stand in front of a client and say, we've got these incredible credentials, we've got these phenomenal technologies, we do all this training, we've got 300,000 people. I think the secret sauce here, and I think it's where Capgemini plays incredibly well, is how do you orchestrate that into an outcome?
Yes.
And actually, I think Capgemini's superpower is the way that we work with clients. We are a highly collaborative organization. We can work with different combinations of technology and bespoke it for the right outcome for clients. How you do that, how you work in a period of hyper change with clients. So you're investing as much in the collaboration, as much in the change management as you are in the technology, I think is what makes Capgemini different, particularly if you want to scale these end-to-end changes. So yes, there's some uniqueness about there are very few organizations that combine our engineering, data, technology requirements. But the magic is actually about how we make that come alive and the way that we work with clients, the way that we stand up with integrity, the way that we put our clients' outcomes ahead of our own outcomes. That's the real magic, I think, for Capgemini.
I love hearing the word outcomes. I mean, you're helping me validate Tech Market View's research theme for 2026, which, for those who haven't read it, is precision over panacea. So you should read the launch piece.
I did read it.
You have.
I can
just in
guarantee
case our viewers have.
It's a good read. Actually, it's not a long read.
It's not a long read. It's punchy.
Yeah.
But it's really saying that we think the key to ensuring that AI starts to live up to this hype that we were talking about earlier is to start being much more precise about what you're trying to achieve with it. And that means, like you say, having a real outcome, a business outcome in mind, having much more organization-specific use cases that you're trying to deliver. Because actually, if you understand the industry, you understand the organization, you can knock down some of the many barriers that we've seen that are preventing that acceleration of AI adoption. I wonder, have you got some examples in Capgemini that you can bring that to life a bit, where you've been very precise on an outcome for a client, leveraged AI for their benefit, and brought real business benefits to the client as a result?
Yeah, I think there are a few. So we're working with a global life sciences company at the moment, and one of the challenges that life science companies have is their R&D investment is significantly ahead of the commercial reality of achieving that. And we're working around drug development, life cycle, and AI tooling actually allows you to drive a lot more R&D to begin with in terms of using that tooling, so you can do more. You can actually fail faster, which is important for life sciences. So you're actually able to really accelerate and compress the time that you're able to put into research on drug development. And that goes into very deep, precise sort of DNA modeling. So you've got that deep domain capability where you have to have people that understand the drug development lifecycle, combined with the data, the technology, the AI modeling, that then allows you to apply that and accelerate the outcome. So that would be a classic example where you're bringing that domain content with tooling. Another one which I really liked, but it's a very sort of it wasn't done for commercial reasons. We recently did something in partnership with Google on the Imperial War Museum. So we took 20,000 interviews that were on tape. A lot of them were from the Second World War, but not exclusively. They were from multiple conflicts. And we were able to digitize those recordings using AI tooling. They're multi-language as well. And so what that effectively has enabled, if you think about the application that commercially, you can look at whether it's a training environment or a learning environment. If you're an engineering company, you can now digitize all of your content, make it searchable. So when you're bringing new people into the workforce, they can access the immediate bit that they need, and you can accelerate the learning. And you also, in that one, you're creating a new way of referencing history. And then if you overlay an experience on that, you can make the insight of that far more interesting and rewarding, as well as securing these wonderful, stories and part of individuals' perspective on this extraordinary conflict that happened, 80 odd years ago. I mean, it's an amazing
I can see
story.
the joy in your face. Being able to see the real life outcomes of something that you're delivering is clearly something that makes you very happy.
But when I think that's the promise of when you get this right, you can genuinely transform individuals' perspectives. And I think I'm extraordinarily positive about what AI can do. And yes, there will be challenges, but I'm generally very positive about it.
And another challenge, actually, is on your own organization, isn't it? Because AI is not just disrupting your clients, it's disrupting the services you deliver as well, whether it be AI encoding or AI to support the service desk or whatever. It's being embedded in all your traditional service lines, essentially, and disrupting your model. So I just wonder, can you talk me through, in your view, the implications of that for Capgemini, maybe on your operating model or on the way you price services to your clients, and where you're having to make changes as a result?
it is fundamentally changing the way we're thinking about the way we develop skills, the way we change our methodologies for our delivery in front of clients, the way that we price commercial opportunities, where effectively, if you're signing up for a deal over 3 to 5 years, you're having to make some judgments about the tooling you're going to be developing over that period of time in order to be competitive in an environment. And that means actually sometimes the risk aversion that organizations have, actually you need to embrace, you need to lean into that risk and have confidence that you are going to be able to develop technologies and capabilities. And that is a new skill for many organizations. I know there's a lot of talk around changing nature of pyramids. I think we have a commitment around entry-level jobs as large organizations to train the workforce of the future. I think there will still be a wave of opportunities that come on the back of that. I think there are new jobs that are going to be created. I think we've gone through waves of different technologies. The internet technology of sort of the 1990s, where people were saying, well, traditional bricks and mortar were no longer, there's still a role for that. So I think it will be different, but I think there'll be new opportunities.
Nearly everything you just said can be summed up in one word: uncertainty. So how do you personally and Capgemini deal with not knowing how quickly things will change or what will change? And obviously one of the biggest risks is to your traditional IT services. Do you have any concerns that your existing revenue from those traditional services will cannibalize faster than you can make up the revenue in newer offerings?
The genie is out the bottle. You can't put it back in. So we have to be confident that actually we're going to lead our clients through this period of change. And if your starting point is at all times, do the right thing for your client, then that's going to tee you up to be successful in the longer term. And there may be in some clients where that means our revenue decline in the short term, but we protect them over the medium term. But I think you have to start with do the right thing for your clients, and then you flow through that.
Okay. That what you just said, and much of what you said already kind of gives us a clue as to how you think Capgemini best differentiates in the marketplace. When you sit in front of a client or a prospect, how do you sit there and articulate that to the client in a couple of sentences to them?
Why
Capgemini?
Why Capgemini? Look, I think it comes down to a combination of things, which I'll sum up in one word. It is the different technologies that we bring. We're quite unique in our full service capabilities. But fundamentally, it is the way that we then deploy those. And I think the biggest word I'd sum up on that, which is why clients value what we do, is trust. You have to earn the trust to help clients transform something, particularly if it's the core of their business. So who are clients going to lean to during periods of disproportionate change? They're going to lead to the provider they trust. So we have to have trust. And that comes from relationships. It comes from doing the right thing. It comes from putting your client interests first. It comes from having the right values and behaviors that drive your organization. And that's why I go back to that superpower. The superpower of Capgemini is the way that we think, the way that we collaborate. And that is all about establishing trust with our clients.
Yes, I think I've heard you use the term the way we turn up every day in the past.
Yes.
And so a huge part of that has to be about your people.
Correct.
So you have to attract those people, you have to retain those people, you have to upskill those people. You've got 14,000 of those people in the UK. So how do, firstly, you make sure that the top talent wants to come to Capgemini? And also, going back to that pyramid model that we were talking about earlier, how do you ensure that with AI increasingly being used for those really simple tasks, that you still bring in the entry level in order to protect the organization for the longer term, I guess?
Yeah, well, so I think there's a variety of things you do to attract and retain the right talent. Some of that is setting out a positive vision around a narrative in terms of what we're doing, what we stand for in the market. So we've never backed away from things like sustainability, for example. It's core to what we do, and it's core to the way I'm measured, for example. And so while there may be some tendencies in other parts to downplay that, we've sort of said, no, this is important. This is a hyper trend that's going on in the market, and we need to represent and stand through for some of those really important outcomes that we're driving. As it relates to entry jobs, clearly we want to be able to attract the best talent. And I find it fascinating when you speak to that generation in the workforce now, in terms of the things that are motivating them aren't necessarily the things that motivated you and I when we joined. I think I was far more pliable, if I say that, in terms of
I agree.
I'll do whatever you want me to do, sort of
Yes.
thing. Whereas I think the generation entering the workforce now, they want to understand what they're doing. They want to sense that they're making far more of a contribution
Purpose.
earlier.
Yes.
And I've used this expression. It's not just about growth; it has to be purposeful growth. And I think what we represent is, yes, we are a commercial organization who wants to make a return. That's important for a whole variety of reasons. But also we stand and represent for something. So you're right to highlight, we're hugely proud of the work we do with government. But when you're helping the government solve some of society's hardest problems, that is a purpose. And when I look back on the things that I was most proud of in my career, they're often people related. Did you help someone accelerate their development? Did they get to a career milestone because you helped mentor them through that? And I think we have to remember that as leaders, particularly in service organizations with people, that it's memories that matter. It's those moments that matter. And therefore we have to invest as much as we in people and the training and the development and the recognition and the communication as we do in the technology enablement, because both of those are important.
Yeah. I think my son has used the term that he's 20 years old, wants to be close to the mission, he said, which I think is his way of saying purpose. So obviously you attract the talent that you want. You've then, like you say, got to nurture that talent. And you're now nurturing that talent in a very different environment as well. So you're nurturing them in a changing environment that's going to be increasingly AI-driven. So how do you get that right? How do you ensure that your employees can thrive in this more AI-driven environment in the future?
Well, I think we're working through it. Some of it is training. So we have some phenomenal training that we have around we're using those toolings. Some of it is giving them opportunities to apply that. So you can train people as much as you want. If you train them and they don't have the opportunity to do it, you can get frustrated. So we have to make sure that actually we do it, whether it's to ourselves or do it with our clients. So I think it's that. And then it's the classic things of ensuring you're giving enough time for performance reviews and development opportunities, and simple things like you're rotating people through different opportunities. Sometimes the easiest thing is to put someone on one job and then they do that for a multiple period of time.
That happened to me when in my early career, yes.
But again, I had opportunities where I could rotate and do different things. So actually giving people that broad sense of these are the different opportunities. Yes. So that's some of the sort of tactical things we're doing to give people a broader experience.
Okay. And one thing I really want to touch on was sports sponsorship. Obviously, that's one way to attract employees, getting a brand out there, getting people to understand you've got a strong brand identity. Women's Rugby World Cup, Six Nations Rugby, Ryder Cup, America's Cup, Tour de France.
Terrific.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
You're everywhere. I've probably missed something crucial, but that does tell me that brand and brand identity is really important to Capgemini. Can you just talk me through why that is?
Look, there's actually, I think, three aspects. There's brand recognition for clients. And I think putting your brand out there when you're associated with sporting events, sport remains a very popular route to do that. So there's lots of brand awareness, and we're really pleased actually with the increase in brand awareness and then the propensity to consider to buy that we've had from some of that in the UK. So there's that from a client perspective, as well as the experiential things we get to host clients at those events. I think the other aspect is the attraction from people joining. When we have people who are considering applying Capgemini, they've often seen us and they're like, oh, you're the people associated with that. I think the third aspect is, it's not just having our brand. We are really passionate about making a difference to those sports and using data and experience to improve the fan experience or the way that sport is perceived. And the example I'd use on that, if you look at the America's Cup, we developed a technology called Winsight IQ. I'll oversimplifying it, but what we were able to do was use some LiDARs to model the wind. So we were able to put 10 by 10 grids to then visualize how strong the wind was. So we could look at the boats, where they were tracking, and use predictive analysis to find out who was most likely to win. And we had this concept of a ghost boat. Actually, the technology to do that from an engineering and data and experience perspective was extremely complicated.
Okay.
But it hugely improved the viewer experience. It hugely improved the way the sport itself could operate. And actually, we're now applying that same technology in different engineering environments. For example, looking at the way that aircraft take off and land to model the wind shear that comes off aircraft to see if you can accelerate the productivity of airports.
And how well did the AI predict the winners of the
It was phenomenal.
Cup? Okay.
What was really
It's a good
interesting
case study then.
is when you spoke to the teams, they would go immediately afterwards and go, what was the ghost boat tracking?
Okay.
So actually, even the teams themselves were really interested in the data.
Believing in it, yeah.
So that would be an example of, that's really interested. And you take rugby. Capgemini has been associated with rugby for a long time. It goes back to one of our founders, Serge Kampf. He was very passionate about rugby. He felt the values and ethos of rugby, of sort of team over individual, highly collaboration, represented the best attributes of Capgemini. Something that I grew up playing rugby that I would also agree.
You're a big sports person, aren't you?
So, but that was very important for us to continue both the legacy of association with rugby, but also to continue that into the next generation. But rugby is also not as widely known as football. So
in some camps,
in
our house, it's more well
known. in some camps, you're right. But therefore, we developed a tri-zone IQ in the recent Women's World Cup, which is the first time that AI has been used to improve the viewer. And some of those were, again, using predictive data scores to say what was going on. But the reason for it, working with the World Cup, was to try and provide a bit more insight for new viewers of the sport. It wasn't designed for someone like me who knows the sport well. It was designed to try and explain rugby, which is a phenomenally complicated sport if you're not new to it.
Could you do that for American football, please? I might then be able to understand.
That's a good point. I know. American football is very complicated.
That's my son and my husband's sport. But you said something interesting then, that Serge thought that the culture and values in rugby reflected Capgemini's.
Yeah.
Has it worked the other way around? So do you feel that the involvement in those sorts of events influences the culture and values of Capgemini? Makes them stronger?
I think it's helpful to anchor us in our identity as a business. Every organization needs to have and be very proud of their history, because our legacy and our sense of values and purpose and behaviors are anchored in what we've done previously. And so I think that tie to Serge, and in particular his passion for rugby, is a very valuable connection in terms of maintaining that legacy, as well as actually making sure that we're putting our own footprint on it now. I would say it's very important. Okay.
Now, I hope you've watched other View from the Top podcasts, and you've identified that we do a quick fire round towards the end of the session.
Yeah, I think this was the scariest bit, right? But let's go for it.
I try not to be too scary, but just sort of short one-word or one-sentence answers. So are you ready?
Let's give it a go.
Go. So, one thing you'd change about how UK enterprises approach transformation?
Invest as much in people as you do in technology.
How has individual and team sport participation impacted your own leadership style?
Hugely.
How?
Always put the team over the individual. So it's really interesting when you look at teams. Each team, whether it's in sports or in business, need relatively few people who enable success in others. Whether that's in football, you've got the midfielder who makes the short passes and enables everyone else. Those roles are hugely valuable, but they're often overlooked because you're not the striker getting the goal or the goalkeeper making the save. But you need people who enable success in others, and business is no different from sports in that regard.
The small cog that impacts everything, yes. Okay. And finally, so that you can leave this front of our viewers' minds, what is the most underrated Capgemini capability that clients don't know about?
Engineering.
Okay.
Engineering in the sense of we do the most incredible things from proper engineering, not just tech, that will blow your mind.
That probably is quite unknown, yes. On that note, thank you, Rob. And thank you to our viewers for joining us again. That's been another Tech Market View from the top. And we'll have another UK leader sat in the chair in the not too distant future.